And this is, I feel like, a really important message to get out to men, because I do believe that a lot of men have the perspective that you have, which is bring that 50. And I think men have to understand what that means and what you get when you expect a woman to bring 50%. Like, I can bring 50.
Yeah.
And I know women who can bring 60, 70.
Okay.
Okay. But as a man, do you really want what 50 plus brings? Because 50 plus brings a lot of energy. It doesn't bring neck energy. It's bringing head energy. And so when we talk about women being the neck, men being the head, right? Like it's bringing more head energy. And so understand that, right? If you want a woman to bring the table and then some to the table, you get what you pay for, literally.
That is true.
This whole transactional ideology behind relationships is thoroughly marketed to us, you know, specifically the Black and Brown community, through social media and through music. And so when people don't have their own values, they adopt these values. And going back to what the gentleman said, it's a cycle. It's like the woman asked for this and the men are getting what they want out of the situation, you know, and they're able to pay their way through whatever. So it works for both parties a lot of time until people realize that it's not working. So a lot of people do believe it until they get to the, you know, the end of the road or the end of that chapter and figure it out the hard way. Like the young lady said earlier, a functional relationship is about two people being able to contribute, and it doesn't always have to be monetary things, but all of those things are equally as important. The shift of male and female dynamic in a relation, there's been a shift in our culture in regards to what a male and a female's relationship is, and like that, I mean, dynamic is in that relationship, but it's just more thorough. Like there's just more layers added to it, to where you do have to work collectively with a lot of things. And I also think we have to consider, like, are we coming into a situation expecting to go 50-50, or are we getting to know a person that is willing and capable of providing if possible, and then saying, okay, I'm willing to invest also in these other ways with this person. So that's just kind of where my thoughts went with it.
Okay. Go ahead, Aisha.
Like I said, I agree with Casey. I think that I go into a relationship like a marriage, and I'm used to everything going into one pot. So I think the confusion part of it is, I know men who personally count every dollar. And I think that can be frustrating for a woman. Like literally split dinner 50-50. Like everything has to be split 50-50. And I think that when you go into a relationship like that, most women are not transactional. Like we literally go into it with our whole heart. So when you present it to me as a transaction, that's all I'm thinking about. And I don't like the situation like that. I am more than willing to share. Like I literally am like, we can have one account. It can all go into one pot. I don't care. Right? I'm rooting for the family. If you want me, I've been in a situation where I stayed at home, I did not work, and I've been in a situation where I did work, and it all went into one pot. It was never this deep or this big discussion. Like I never heard my dad say that to my mom. Like I just don't know where all of this came from. And I know that people argue and say, well, the economy. It's because of the economy. Please. My grandmother had 9 kids in a 3-bedroom house, right? Her and my grandfather were married forever. I don't ever think that they talked about 50-50. And I think that you have to do what works for you. When you're trying to live above your means, then hey, you might have to contribute more. But if your husband is like, this is what we can do, and if you want to work from home, this is how we're going to be able to live, this is how we maintain, then that's fine. But I also think that people have to do what works for them, because people do try to not appear like they're not going half on it. Most married couples I know, it's either all in one pot or they literally are going half. And it's nothing wrong with that, but it's what works for you. I specifically I don't want to be with somebody that's saying that to me. It's 50-50. It's 50-50. I'm like, what does that mean? Because all the money, if we married in a relationship and we sharing resources, it should all go into one pot. Right? I know I worked for a company, right, where I knew personally a guy that was dating someone at the company. Cannot make this up. They had a set of twins together. The lady was making y'all maybe 45K. This man was making over $200,000 like every other week. 200, like imagine that, right? He was making this lady go 50-50 on the bills. She had to put the kids on her insurance. When her check was done, she had like $200 left.
You know what they say, the higher they are, the dumber they are. So
And I couldn't even believe this man in my heart. I was like, this doesn't even, like, I went to him personally. I was like, why is she having to pay for the insurance? You make the money, it's taking her entire check. Like, he didn't even have any concept of that. That's how selfish he was. So I think that most women, I know for me, when I hear about it, I start thinking like they're selfish. They're not thinking about the family as a whole, because why is this even a conversation? And like, if we going into it and we talking about who's gonna pay the bills and how things are gonna go, my first thought would be like, well, hey, let's just get a joint account and let's just put all of it into one pot, and then the bills will come out of that pot. It shouldn't even be. I just don't know where this 50-50 conversation come from and why men tend to me to push it so hard, because actually that's not really the narrative. Most men that I know, if they can, they just support their family and pay the bills. It's not this big conversation. I know the men that I grew up around and that I'm around, I've never heard them say it or mention it. It just seems like something that's widely discussed on social media.
Well, your grandmother never. I think you say your grandmother had 9 kids. She never complained about it, or they never had a 50-50 conversation. Your grandmother also didn't ask for Louis. You probably didn't have all these fucking smart TVs and PS5s in every room and all this other stuff and lavish trips and lifestyles and all this other stuff either. So yeah, it come with the lifestyle.
You have to live within your means and be responsible, but that's also a part of a man being a responsible leader. And I think, like Trev said, they are the ones who accepting these outlandish requests. Like, these women ain't buying themselves Birkin bags. These are these men doing that. And then the men that's watching them, they think that they should do that too. So they're gonna go try to find a BBL bandit, and they're gonna do the same for her. And then they're gonna look down on us that's wanting to go to work and actually help our family. I don't think there's anything wrong with a woman helping and supporting the family, especially if she's working. Like, I don't see any fault in that. I just don't see no point in having these pointless 50-50 conversations.
Well, you gotta kind of try to understand the man who's pushing it. Look at the system and the society, the way it's set up. And a lot of these guys are maybe choosing 50-50 contingent of failure of the relationship, divorce, the court system. And maybe just maybe they're more comfortable getting into a situation with you when they know you got skinning half of your resources and half of his out. So in the moment it fails, you know what I'm saying, y'all can get away clean. You know what I'm saying? So you don't think that might be the reason why that a lot of these guys may be pushing that conversation?
Can I say something real quick?
Go ahead.
I think that we have to separate the 50-50 concepts in dating, pre-marriage, and post-marriage, because then it gets confusing. Because I feel like you operate differently in those two forms of that. One is a covenant, one is something you're figuring out. You know what I'm saying? So you operate differently, you invest differently. So can we kind of separate the two a little bit?